We are here today to talk about a very important matter, the future of the federal workforce. I'm grateful that we're having this hearing because this issue is a tremendous problem. You know, as a small business owner myself, I understand that a company is only as good as its workers. That's truly what make up, you know, what you do and how well you do it. It's the people that you employ and how you hold those people accountable for the job that they actually do. So, you know, when people do not work in person, then it becomes very problematic for what they're able to accomplish. So I think people need to get back to work. I know my Democrat colleagues don't necessarily understand this concept, since many of them are still routinely proxy voting and tuning into these committee hearings via video conference. And as Mr. Keller mentioned, we had a huge issue with that yesterday. It's long past time that people return to work in person. It's unacceptable that many federal employees are teleworking more than 2.5 years since the start of COVID-19. You know, even if folks in Washington don't want to recognize it, the rest of the United States has moved on and has returned to work in person. So I think it's imperative that federal workers return to work in person because people are being hurt by the continuation of this telework. Since the start of COVID-19, for example, our veterans, of which I am one, have suffered greatly by experiencing delays in accessing and receiving their records from the NPRC, which has been doing an abysmal job and has tremendous backlog. So this leads to my question. Earlier this summer, it was reported that 25% of federal bureaucrats at the Department of Health and Human Services, this is the Department of Health and Human Services now, failed to log into their office suites that included their work email during the first 10 months of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this particular article, and Mr. Chairman, I would like to unanimous consent to submit this for the record.
Without objection.
All right, it's called "A Quarter of Federal Health Workers Failed to Check Email During the Pandemic." It's an article from the Free Beacon, June 17th, 2022. And now, mind you, HHS, they employ 80,000 workers. So that's 20,000 employees. And they have a requested mandatory budget of $1.7 trillion and $127 billion in discretionary spending. That's huge. And 25% of them for 10 months don't know how to check their email or are unable to or simply don't. How in the world do you do your work? I mean, if we didn't have email, I simply couldn't do my work. How can they do theirs? So I want to know, do you find this acceptable? Ms. Ahuja?
Thank you, Congressman Clyde, for that question. And I know we were speaking about that earlier, about this particular issue, and we're certainly going to look into it, as Chairman Connolly had mentioned and asked us to. I will say that we've talked also a lot about the fact that during the pandemic, more than 50% of the workforce continue to show up every day. As you know, this is the embracing workplace flexibilities is happening in the private sector as well. They are restructuring their jobs for telework.
Okay, I just asked a question. Do you find that acceptable? Yes or no would suffice.
Well, the workforce has been resilient, and they have showed up, and we have
just
embraced.
Answer the question, ma'am. That's all.
We have embraced the telework and remote work arrangements in a way that I think will utilize and maximize.
Ma'am, do you find that 25% didn't even check their emails for 10 months? Is that acceptable or is that not?
Thank you, Congressman Clyde, for that question. As we had discussed earlier,
I've asked it 3 times now.
We are looking into it, and if that is the case, that would not be acceptable, no.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly what I want. So that is not acceptable. All right, because what I want to know is, what is the Biden administration's top priority here? Is it giving timely, high-level customer service to the American people? I mean, you just told my colleague, Mr. Keller, that OPM is committed to the best customer service. Is that right?
I did.
Okay, all right. So what is that, the Biden administration top priority? Or is it, as his executive order put out, diversity and inclusion? I mean, what is it? Well, what's the top priority?
Thank you, Congressman Clyde, for the question. I think we have multiple priorities that we're focused on.
But what's the top priority? That's what I want to know. What's the top priority?
We're focused on ensuring that we have a workforce that can deliver on customer service and mission to the American public. We're focused on ensuring that our workforce is engaged, that they feel that there's an inclusive work environment so they can excel. We are focused on the fact that we have to be a part of this future of work.